And we knew our price range and what would work best. So we found a house that we were interested in, and we told God, made this deal with him. If it'll be in this price range, that means you want us to have it.
Okay, good.
So yeah, we applied and asked for the price or whatever. It was a little higher than what we went. But we said, oh God, I'm pretty sure that means, yeah, you want us to have it.
It was close enough.
It's close enough,
yep,
yeah.
Okay, yep.
So we bought it. It worked good. Things went good. It was big enough for all of us.
Excellent.
We enjoyed our time there. We moved away and couldn't sell it. So then, of course, questions.
Yeah.
Is God punishing me now because I bought that house and shouldn't have, because it wasn't in that deal that I really should have made with him truly.
Okay, yep.
And a little question, was I supposed to move? Like, which one am I messing up on? Maybe all of it.
Somewhere I'm not doing this right, obviously.
Yeah. But through it all, even though we've had the house this long, still do, we've had somebody who's lived in it and rented. And
that's helped, yeah.
Yes, big time. And they have helped, so they're paying for it. There's some months that they don't. So, maybe that's the time that God's punishing, but...
or it's definitely the time you start questioning.
Questioning that, yes. Right, yeah.
Yep.
But in it all, God's performing miracles and teaching, we're learning things through it and learning patience, and God's got it under control.
That's cool. And I like how you didn't mention it here tonight, but you've talked about it before, how it's also been kind of a laboratory for your kids to learn about watching how does mom and dad react and how does their faith respond to situations that you didn't expect. Situations that you figured, hey, I thought you were going to take care of this, God. What's going on?
Yeah, it's been cool to watch them through it all. Because they've been praying with us. They know, they check, did you get the rent check this month? And stuff like that. And so
that's really cool.
Have seen the struggle that we've gone through with it.
Sure. So I'm sure that most of you out there have had experiences like this, or different ones that have to do with basically how do we view God and what do we find true about who God is. And we have, in this journey that we've been on together as a spiritual community, been finding new things about God, or been reminded of new things about God. And one of them, as you're mentioning, is this idea about God's will. You thought this was God's will, and then when things don't work out well, did I go outside of God's will? And I don't know, have you ever had opportunities where you had to pray for God's will and you were super freaked out about, I don't know, because he won't answer?
Yes, very much.
Can you think of one that kind of epitomizes that, and is that right there, man, this was a hard one because we were afraid of doing the wrong thing? When
we got our first call to move to a state that I had no desire whatsoever to move to. So I figured I'm probably trying to twist God's decision and he wants me to go, but I do not want to go.
Sure.
I kept trying to throw out the fleece, and I literally did. I put a towel out in the grass, and he didn't answer. It didn't stay wet. The nights I asked that it would be wet and the grass dry, it didn't happen. And I did it the other way. Didn't happen. Nothing.
At least a raccoon didn't come and take it away, because what would you do with that? What is God saying when I don't even have my fleece anymore? He stole my fleece. So we have this idea that, or many of us have this idea that there is this very narrow view of God's will. We ask, I remember being in college and working at on a college campus, know that there's this question comes out a lot. Hey, what is God's will for my life? Mm-hmm. And I actually think that's a wrong question to ask. And what we're finding true about God is that that's just not a good question to ask the question of what is God's will for my life, but instead ask the question, what is God's will? Because he definitely has a will. He has a will that he wants to save. He wants to recreate. He wants to bring creation back into his kingdom. And there's lots of things that is God's will. But when we narrow it down to what is God's will for our life, then suddenly we have this fear about, well, what if I step, to the right or to the left and that's wrong? Then that's going to be, I'm going to be outside of God's will, and therefore, if I'm outside of God's will, everything is going to come crashing down, and then he's going to punish me, and things aren't going to work out, and I'm going to miss house payments, and,
go bankrupt.
Yes, I might go bankrupt and all that, and that's this really weird head game that we play that I don't think does God any justice, because I think God's will is, if you look at it, what is God's will rather than what is God's will for my life, rather than being, as a good friend said, a concrete highway, it can be, if God's will for my life is a concrete highway, then if you think about what is God's will, then that's something so much bigger. That's a big beach or a giant playground, something you can play in, something that allows the freedom to go back and forth. And therefore, God can take pleasure in just collaborating with you and with with the choices that you make. I mean, I think he gives us enough information to make wise decisions, and then actually expects us to start making those decisions. I mean, I don't know. Tell me how you've raised your kids. Do you expect them to come to you with everything?
No.
Do they come to you with everything?
Sometimes.
Oh,
it gets a little bit much.
It gets a little annoying.
I want them to think on their own. I want them to have to figure it out
instead
of me giving them that answer.
Right? So why would we not give that privilege to God as well?
Right.
Right? So that's one of the things we've learned, that this idea of God's will is much bigger. What if all is as it should be? Oh, Gina, man. See, if you look in the comments, Gina asks a pretty good question. What if all is as it should be? And I can't argue with that. I think that one of the things that I will go to our next one is that what if God does not micromanage?
Yeah.
Right? Like what if he's not about these intricate details of wanting to, okay, you have to wear this and you have to do this and you have to, and having all these huge details. And what would you say to that question about what if God doesn't micromanage?
He didn't make me a robot, so why would I have to always be concerned about making
That's true.
that one decision, the right one always?
Yeah. That's excellent. And with that idea that there are results and consequences of just choices, and God seems to be okay with those. So what if this idea, going back to your house of, okay, I don't know if I was really in God's will because suddenly we don't have this payment or whatnot. What if that had nothing to do with God? What if that wasn't God punishing you? What if that wasn't God saying, see, I told you? What if that wasn't God testing you? What if that was just a result of...
I truly believe, I think that is how it is. I think there's consequences, whether they're good or not. It's just how life flows.
Yeah. And God seems to be okay with that. So I'm going to say, if God's okay with it, then all is well, even when I don't want to give it that title or that label, because I want things to look a certain way and I expect things to look a certain way. But it seems like God's okay with fluctuations. He's okay with the mess of life. And I don't think he likes to micromanage, because if he micromanages, and when we say this could also look like, well, I'm really glad that, hey, I'm praising God that I suddenly got this thing. I've been praying for this, and here it is, so God must have given me this thing. But then,
then if something goes wrong,
then what happens?
Then what?
Right? Then God's on the hook for, well, God, why did you give me this? When maybe he's saying, I didn't necessarily give this to you. It just happened, and I'm working with you through it.
Yeah.
So that idea of God's interaction with us, I think, has a lot more free play than this heavenly being that just points down and goes, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this, because that's not free will. That's not love. And love what love does is it gives free will. It requires free will. You can't force anything.
And I don't expect my children to do
Yeah.
it just this way. They have
Well,
that freedom.
sometimes I do.
Well,
Sometimes I do, but
you
that's
need
my
to-
own parental issue.
You need to work on that.
Yeah, I do
on the
need to
side.
just allow that to just be. It's still getting done. It's just not the way I want it to
Right?
be done. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we
God's
still-
much better at that than I am.
Yes. But we still love them, and we still
Yeah.
we're proud of what they're doing.
Yep. We still
A little
journey with them.
frustration maybe on the side. But.
Right. A little bit of frustration. Okay, so we talked about God having this narrow plan that God doesn't micromanage. I was about to say microwave. God doesn't microwave. Okay, it's not the way He works.
work.
Nope. Another thing that
Oh, there we go.
another thing that we're learning about God as we're journeying together, and we're learning these things in community. It's not like this is just happening to just me or just Tanya. These are happening to all of us, and we're dialoguing and discussing and giving opportunity to listen and learn with each other. But another one is that I don't believe that God tests us to see if we're going to remain faithful. And how this comes out, because I've heard people say this, is, well, I'm going through this tough time. God must be testing me to see if I'm going to stay faithful, and I need to stay faithful. And I don't think that's worded correctly. And I know it's kind of a way of semantics, but I don't think God tests us to see if we're going to remain faithful, because God already knows,
Yeah,
right?
He
He
knows
knows
the
our
end of
heart.
everything.
He knows the end. He's got everything. I think a better way of looking at it is this idea that He may test our faith so that He gives us opportunity to exercise what He's already given us. Because I do believe that God does want us to exercise, just like giving us opportunity to choose and to use the wisdom that He's given us. Use the tools. Hey, I've given you these things. You got a brain in your head. Use it.
Right.
And I think He'll do the same thing with our faith. I've given you a grain of faith. I've given you evidence to believe and reason to believe. I'm going to give you opportunity, to express that. So what does this say? Okay, another question coming in real quick. Do we put too much emphasis on God controlling everything? What would you say?
I think yes.
You do?
Don't,
You think that? Man, I don't know if I can sit here right now. Yes. I'm just
He's there.
I'm just messing with her. Yeah.
He's with us and traveling through it all,
Okay.
but He's not telling us how, if it goes this way, it's going to be good or bad.
Yeah.
He's going to work through the path that we choose. And
Yeah.
He already knows what path we're choosing.
And I don't think it really
It's not a
really
shock.
matters to God. Yeah, it's not a shock. And I don't think it really matters. I think he's good with working with wherever we are. I mean, I think He knows that there are certain things that would benefit us more than others,
Right.
choices that we would make, but He's not limited.
And He's not going to punish us for not getting the better
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
And I think
it would've been
that
healthier for
that
us.
ties into. We'll use that as the next one, because that ties in really well with the idea of testing us. Is that I don't think that God punishes us for past mistakes, but sometimes we act like He does. And I've heard people say this. That, well, what is it when things go wrong in a whole, usually it's the situation where things go wrong and it's a whole succession of things going wrong, just kind of steamrolling one thing after another, then you're like frustrated, and God, what did I do to deserve all of this? Why can't I get a break? And I don't, and you start rolling those tapes in your head. What did I do wrong that would cause God to bring me to this place? And I don't think that's a healthy place to be, that God would punish you for past mistakes. And here's the main thing that I don't like about that. And then I want to hear what you have to say. To punish us for our past mistakes means that Jesus' death and sacrifice was not big enough to take care of all of our mistakes.
Right. Well, they say God, when you ask for forgiveness, He throws it away and it's
Right.
out. It's gone. So why would He be pulling it back in?
Let me remind you of what you did back then.
Right. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
To punishing us.
Yeah, or this weird celestial manipulator that's like, see, I told you you shouldn't have done that. Yeah, that's not a very loving God, and it's not a very healthy. Like we wouldn't do that. We know in relationships, when you and your husband work through an issue, you let that go.
Yeah.
And you don't bring that back up later, weeks later. Oh, well, remember when you did blah, right? Yes, I'm talking to the producer right now. You're not supposed to do that. Sometimes, we do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it still happens, but
Because
a healthy.
We don't have the perfect that God
correct.
has.
Yeah. But we know that a healthy communication means you deal with it and you put it back there and let it go, and you move on and understand. Okay, hey, we dealt with that. We found resolution. I don't need to keep bringing up past hurts. Mm-hmm. There may still be consequences to those, and those can keep coming up, but we don't have to keep punishing because of the past hurts. And I wouldn't expect God to do that either. I don't think that's very healthy for God to do either. So we got another question coming up. You read this one.
Isn't the part of God's love to let us choose and learn?
Isn't that part of God's love?
Isn't that? Okay.
What would you say?
Well, I got to think it through.
Wait,
pull it back up.
We need that back up here real quick.
I said it, but I didn't hear what I said. Isn't that part of God's love to let us choose and learn? Yes, I agree.
You do?
I do.
Oh, Julie, you got some good stuff there.
Yeah.
Okay, so why would you agree? Why? What about choosing? What was it again? Oh, he just erased it. Oh.
That part of God's love to let us choose and learn.
Oh, choose and learn. What about choose and learn is loving?
Because it's helping us. Well, one would be to give us self-esteem.
Okay.
In that we can make decisions, and we can make some, and if we make some wrong ones, we learn that that's just learning. It's a learning process, and give ourselves grace over it.
I like that. That's something that we try to do as a community a lot. When people bring up past mistakes, and the way they frame them, man, I did such and such, and man, that was such a mistake. But we know that at the time they did that, they weren't coming into it as a mistake.
Right.
And so we will tell them, give yourself grace, like you just said, give yourself grace. You weren't, while the result might have been something that was not good, you didn't go into that situation wanting these bad, negative things to happen.
And where you were at that point, it was the right decision to make.
So allow that to be.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, allow that to be. And again, if there's more free play in the way God interacts with us, then even if bad things happen, it's not, God, we're going against God's will. It could just be the result of, sometimes we live in a crummy world and bad things happen. Mm-hmm. And that's just a reality.
It's just life.
Yeah. Okay, so last one about some of the things we're learning that we're finding true about God. In this one, it's kind of a fun one, I think, but maybe some people are a little afraid of it. The idea of God is not limited to Judeo-Christianity. I'm going to just let that sit for a minute. You just chew on that. You don't have anything. You don't have any. You don't even have any water to sip. So God is not limited to Judeo-Christianity. Let's talk about this real fast. This idea comes from what I believe, how Scripture says, hey, all good things come from above. And I also believe that while we get the clearest picture of who God is through Jesus Christ, I do believe, or I don't believe that God is just limited to a geographic nation, that it was only the Jews, that it was only the Christians, that definitely it was only white America. I don't see God being limited to that. I think that God showed himself to the Native Americans. I think that God showed himself to ancient Chinese, that he showed himself to Middle Eastern people, that in all of the religions that you have, I do believe that all the world religions are man's attempt to reach out to God, and I think God responds to them, even if they're not within a specific, say Judeo-Christianity, Buddhism, Hindu, Islam. I can't agree with all their tenets, but I believe if we give them space and we can learn from them, we can actually see That truth is truth no matter what religion it's in. That God leaves breadcrumbs of who he is, that if you were to follow those breadcrumbs, they would lead you to Jesus Christ, or that idea of Jesus Christ. And so the important part of that is that if God is not limited to Judeo-Christianity, then we can learn so much from other people if we can feel safe enough in our relationship with him to listen and to engage with other people. I don't have to go and sit at a Buddhist, monastery and learn about Buddhism, but I can become friends with Buddhists and I can learn some of the things that they believe, and I can even agree with some of those things because, again, I think that God leaves breadcrumbs. He leaves a trail. He leaves truth in all things because whenever man reaches out to a deity, God is going to be there to try to reach back and pull in and engage because I think we find that in Scripture and in our lives true about God is that he's always reaching out for people. He's always wanting to draw people in. So you may not be comfortable with that. I'm okay with that. These are just things that some of us are learning, and I can't even say all the things that we've said here are true for everyone in our community.
Yeah.
Right?
We're all in our own learning spots.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay. So what about you? I'd love for you to do a little homework and give us something to read and engage with in the comments. What do you find to be true about God? If you can leave those in the comments, we would love to read those and to, like I said, kind of listen and hear what you guys have to say. I think that's about all I have. What about you? You good?
Good.
Okay. Hey, before the light goes out again, we just want to say thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you back here, same place, same time, maybe a little bit earlier, at actually 7 o'clock on Friday. We'd love to have you there next week. And please share this with a friend that may find this useful, or tell some other people about our Facebook Live. And we'd love to have more people engage in this kind of community. So thanks so much. Have a great night.